Hello, we're back. Eric Hamilton here at Lark in the Morning Music in beautiful Berkeley, California. And here's the tailpiece for this nice gypsy jazz guitar. Buffed it out the other day. It was really super tarnished, but it's looking pretty good right now. I'm just getting a little bit of the excess buffing compound off of the leather here. Yeah. So we're going to restring this guitar now. Got a fresh set of D'Addarios here that are specifically made for this type of guitar. And I'm going to reattach the tailpiece. Came off with just these 3 screws. I think I'm going to put some gloves on for this. Okay, 1 clean glove, 1 dirty glove over my dirty ace bandage. Okay. Once again, I had a hand surgery from, you guessed it, too many years of repair work and guitar playing. I don't wish that on anybody. Take care of your hands if you're still young, because as you start to get older, they're going to start barking back at you. So first thing I do when I restring, actually, I'll put the tailpiece on, obviously, but is I make sure that the guitar is super clean. Now that I have these cotton gloves on, it makes it feel real easy to get the little bits and pieces. Any guitar that I do a restring on, first thing I do is take the old strings off, obviously, give it a nice cleaning and polishing, and then I hit the fretboard and I try to get all of the stuff out in the corners of the frets, all the way up the board. Now this is a new guitar, so it doesn't have too much, but it has been played a lot, actually. So we're trying to keep it in like new condition. It gets a little tough after a couple of years, people trying things out. But here we go, we're just kind of giving it a good cleaning, and I'm staying away from the very far edges here when I get near the body. I don't want to steel wool the top of the guitar at all. And then when I'm all done, I go this way, so I kind of reestablish a grain. Any scratches that may have gone this way from the steel wool, I'm getting them all out. I'll wipe that down pretty good. I have this handy little blower here too that I got from Amazon. It's a cleaner for electronics, actually, but I like to use it for this type of thing too. It's just really great for keeping things clean along the way, and dust building up on the instrument, especially steel wool, can cause a lot of problems. Scratches, fine scratches everywhere, so I like to get rid of it as soon as possible. So the next thing I do is I run a bead of fingerboard conditioning oil right down the whole thing, and then with my bare hands, and just kind of massage that right into the fingerboard. Give it a good drink. Sucks up all that oil and keeps it nice and fresh, and keeps it from drying and cracking. All those bad things that happen, especially if it's going to be shipped to a drier area of the planet. So you can safeguard against most problems that may arise, cracking and that sort of thing. So let that sit for just a minute. While that's sitting, let's get the tailpiece on there. And this came with 3 nice little gold screws, so we're just going to use those. And standard Phillips screwdriver. And it probably just popped right into place because, it was designed to fit right in this spot. I'm always pushing against the screw as I turn it because I want to be sure that that screwdriver head locks well into that Phillips crosshair there. Typically, I'll put my fingers down here and hold the whole thing in place. These are pretty solid heads here. Okay, and there's our tailpiece, looking pretty good. Around this way again. You can see a lot of that oil is really soaked into the fingerboard. I'm going to wipe off the excess now. Isn't that pretty? It looks pretty good to me. One more nice polish. Use some of this Music Nomad for gloss finishes. Complete guitar maintenance in one bottle. Cleans, polish, waxes, and protects in one easy step. Pro strength formula. And paper towels, there's on really soft finishes, they can leave scratches, and I would prefer to use microfiber. But on these hard surfaces here, they're pretty cool. Paper towels work just fine. I mean, you don't have to get the most expensive on the market either, but the cheap ones are definitely scratchy. Kirkland, I like those. They're bigger and they last longer. Okay, so we got our excess oil off the fingerboard and we got the guitar nice and clean. So let's put some strings on it, shall we? And the bridge, of course, when I'm putting it back in place here, these little wings here are just decorative, obviously, but you can see that there are different sizes. You can see that this was the 6th and this was the 1st, skinny, and that was a little fatter as far as the diameter of the slot. So that's going to go back here. This is kind of movable. Maybe we can fine-tune the intonation if we have to at the end, but they've already got the slant that's going to compensate for the calibration. So these are light gauge gypsy jazz guitar strings. Let's start with number 6. D'Addario is color coded and they're always pretty much the same. Big brass one will go on 6 and the red one goes on 5. And as we're at it, let's just put all 6 of them on there because it makes it easier as these things go. And now number 4 is black and number 3 is green. And if you ever question it, you can look at the thickness of the string. You can see they're slightly different thickness. And you can also look at the back of the pack here, and it tells you first silver, second purple, and so on. So that's pretty convenient. Just helping you beginners out there. We like D'Addarios across the board pretty much because they're very consistent. They sound good and they have long life, which is very important, especially in the music store situation, because lots of times guitars will sit on the shelf for a long time and they won't move as quickly, and so we want our strings to last a long time so that lots of people can try them out. This is what we call a slotted peg head, and so for all strings, so that I can have maybe 3 inches of slack in the center when I'm tugging up, and that's where I start. Now put a nice little kink in there and wrap it around once. Pretty good, holding on to it. At this point, I don't necessarily want to, do a hook on here, what they call luthier's knot, but instead, I'm just going to cross over on the string, the tail to go under the long length so that it kind of anchors it down at the same time. And when I go to restring, they just pop right off. Now, I do this on the slotted peg heads only, and I do classical guitars very much the same. And so I can minimize the number of wraps and know that it's nice and secure. And yeah, you have to kind of hand feed these things a lot of times. So if you're really careful up front here, you won't have any problems down the road. Here we go. Here's my first string in place and tuned up to pitch. We'll talk about stretching in a minute, but I also clip these off to maybe 2 millimeters at the end, and then I push the very spiky end down if I can, just so that you don't snag your finger on it. Not much chance of that with these slotted peg heads. Let me just repeat. Number 2. Sorry, the first string and the 6th string will wrap toward the outside. You'll have your little tail going this way, and the strings will continue their windings. They'll go toward the outside of the peg head. That'd be 1 and 6. 2, 5, 3, and 4 will all go toward the inside, and that's to maintain a nice string path as we go up toward the peg head. All right, here's my 3 to 4 inch gap here. Give it a nice little kink there and bring it around. This time I'm going to bring my tail toward the inside, and now I'm going to bring it on the inside, as you see. And I'm kind of being extreme about it because I want to be sure that it doesn't slip toward the string hole coming through the shaft. Okay. 2 millimeters maybe. Same kink. 3 to 4 inches, maybe a little more on these heavier strings because they wind up a lot faster. And once again, we're going to bring it toward the center of the peg head. These are a little bit tougher, so you have to kind of work them a little harder. But you see how that crosses over there, right? Okay. And I like to do this by hand, only because I can keep a good firm amount of tension on it, and I'm not really winding that many times around. It might end up with 2, 3 at the most, So you have a lot less excess string to stretch through at the tuning head. Feed that through one more time. 4 gap. I'm going to get a little increase on the gap because again the strings are going to be heavier, so they take up more space at the peg here. Again toward the center. This is what caused my thumb to go south to begin with. I've been playing guitar so long, I think I've been playing since before they invented string winders, hand winders, much less the power winders, which I have both. But again, on these, I like to do it by hand because I can feel everything along the way and I can manipulate the strings. And there's my gap, a little higher again, see? But you see we end up with 2 wraps here, and that's what we're going for. Pretty much one to hold it down, the second one to make sure it holds down. And again, once again to the inside, toward the inside of the peg box. And I think I'm going to get the power winder at this point because my thumb is wearing out. I'm going to bring this back a little bit this way. It's getting too close to the nut there. So. You see what I'm doing? I'm maintaining the pitch, the tuning pitch along the way, just to give it a sense of where is home. And the last one will go once again toward the outside of the peg box. And it's not really necessary to cross over on this one. The windings are so hefty that it's going to grab even without being secured in any way. You know, so we're in good shape on this last string here. With a bend on the end, it'll just kind of keep that from pulling up through the very little nub sticking out. Okay, so these strings are freshly on there. They're relatively in tune, but very likely within the first 30 seconds are going to be way out of tune because they haven't been stretched. So what we're going to do is get them to the point where you can go out and play a gig in an hour and not have to fool around with tuning your guitar. So the way we're going to accomplish that is we're going to get the strings to stretch out to the point where they won't drop in pitch anymore. And there are a couple of methods of doing this. By hand is the most effective, but initially I use a tool, and sometimes I use two of them. It's called the stretcher. It's designed for doing basically this. Takes the wear and tear out. It's got a hook right here and another one on the underside. Grabs the string from the bottom and then pushes down on the top. And you can go all the way up and down the string. Stretch, 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 stretch. And tune this to pitch. We're going to do it again. Now this second string, same thing. We're going to move on to the next one. If you're really savvy, you can get two of them. And you can start at one end on the one, and the other end on the other, and work your way out, and then back in. Same thing on the 4. Now that's a good start. So that's pretty relatively in tune, but I'm not completely happy yet. So at this point, I like to actually take the guitar, put it in my hands, and then go through the motions of actually stretching the string. Now I'm going to push down here so I don't compromise the nut. And I'm going to just really give it a good tug all the way up and down, pulling up with the fingers, pushing down with the thumb. Okay, and you can even do this with both hands. Now the trick is to feel where the tension stops, because you can break a string by doing this. But 9 times out of 10, a string breaking is because there's something biting it somewhere. It's some at one end or the other. Now usually it's up here. There's a burr or something on the hole that passes through, or you're hung up somewhere up here and it's causing the string to get actually bitten by the burr. And I've broken 2 or 3 strings in a row by doing this technique, and finally determined that, yeah, that's the problem, not the string, not me overstretching, but something is actually cutting the string. So you want to be aware of that as well. All things being equal, though, you should be able to give it a pretty good tug, feeling where the end of your tension is. Now watch how much we've dropped in pitch. You see? I just hear a little, very slight modulation, but it's pretty damn close. Okay, second string, same thing. Give it that good tug. Actually, I'm going to put it in my lap and do it. These I want to be a little more careful with because the core is very thin. The windings and the core together make up for a wider diameter overall, but what's going on underneath these windings is thinner than that. So I just want to be aware of that. And again, until it really doesn't want to move anymore. Same thing with number 4. That one's pretty much there. Number 5. And then number 6. there you have it. Pretty darn good to me. Okay, so that should stay. You may have to do a little bit of tweaking in between sets, and then it should stay put for the rest of the night, and maybe even on into the next night, and on into the next week, and depending on how much you play, 2 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever. You won't have to mess around with your strings stretching out. And look, it's not even off the workbench yet, and it's ready to go.